What's good, everyone? Enrique here with another video, and this time we're talking about the Digitakt and really focusing on the LFO page. Nailed it. Let's get into it. A quick side note before we get lost in the sauce, this tutorial is going to be a little bit more catered towards beginners than it is the advanced guys, but there may be a couple gems in there and a jam at the end, so stick around. My God, your breath stinks. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump straight into the LFO page. Again, like I said before, this is more catered towards beginners, so I am going to run through this stuff in a slower pace for those guys who are a little bit more advanced, but I will get into some cooler stuff later down the line. So to begin with, I'm going to start with this sample here, and I'm going to go ahead and just place one of those hits on the very first step and press play. Cool, so that's all that it's doing, is just doing this, right? Let's go ahead and slow this down so we just don't lose our mind by the end of this demo or tutorial, I guess you can call it. We'll just say 100, easy. So going back to our LFO page, there's a bunch of different ways that this works. What an LFO is, real quick, is a low frequency oscillator. Basically a wave shape, in this case a triangle wave, repeating over and over. And because it's a low frequency, that basically means super slow. But the cool thing here is you can change the speed and how it's multiplied to make it move faster or slower, and in this case even in reverse, but we'll get to that in a second. So by default, the main power of this is its destinations. You have a ton of different destinations. Basically, you can do anything inside the sample page, the filter page, or the amp envelope page. For demo purposes, I'm going to go to the filter frequency. And that actually brings up a great point. Basically, I selected the wrong thing. I wanted filter frequency, I selected resonance. When it comes to selecting what you want your destination to be, there are two ways to do it. You can either press the destination knob again that you just turned, or you can just hit yes. Me preferably, I do like just hitting this because my hand's already here, but as you can see, sometimes it's a little sensitive, so you may turn it and select something else and then do that in the process. So make sure to double check your destination before you continue. Alright, so now that we have our destination set to our filter frequency, the next most important thing is setting the depth. And what the depth means is basically how much of the settings of this LFO are going to affect that destination, in this case our filter frequency. So this knob is also bipolar, and you can go both positive and negative. And what that means is it's basically going to invert the wave shape. In this case we got a triangle. It's not going to change it too much. Instead of basically going up and then down, it's going to go down and then up. So we'll stick to positive for now. So let's go ahead and set it to 63, press play. That's the yes button. Let's go ahead and press play. So it doesn't really sound like it's doing much, right? That's because we need to go to our filter and turn our filter down. And you can see that it's still, nothing's happening. That's because our LFO is pushing our filter frequency up positively at this speed, which is really slow. So that means it's still on the up cycle of the LFO as it's changing our filter frequency. Hope that makes sense. I'm going to go to LFO and change the speed now. You'll see that it'll start coming back down. See? And now it's really far down, and it's going to start coming back up. There it is. So this brings us to our next most important point, the speed and the multiplier. And what these do is basically the speed is going to change the rate of the LFO, and the multiplier is going to multiply that speed against the BPM or the tempo that the Digitakt is currently set to. In this case, 100. But check this out. If we turn our multiplier past the point of where it says BPM at the top, we'll get to 1, 2, 4, 16, 8, so on and so forth. What's the difference between these two? Basically, the ones without BPM above the number is multiplying. Oh my God, that sounds crazy. Is multiplying. Here, let me stop this before I blow your ear out. Basically, if it says BPM, it's multiplying it against Digitakt's BPM. If it's not saying BPM, it's multiplying it against a forever running 120 BPM tempo within the Digitakt. This allows you to get really cool, like almost polyrhythmic type of weird happy accidents when it comes to the modulation of the LFOs. So, quick fun fact about the speed. This knob is also bipolar, and it's off its meds, so it allows you to go left and right. Basically, what this is going to change, unlike the depth which inverts the LFO, right? Say you have an LFO that goes up and then down. If you turn the depth negative, it's going to go down and then up. But if you turn the speed negatively, it's still going to go up and down, but it's going to play it in reverse. So in a case like a triangle wave shape, it's not really going to do much. But if you start changing your wave shape to something like a down saw, it's going to play that up saw instead of a down saw. Or, similar case, ramps or the exponential. This one here, instead of being like a pluck down, it's going to be like a quick flick up. Quick flick up. Quick flick. So I'm going to set this back to a triangle. And basically the speed knob, another quick tool is if you hold down function while you turn this knob, or any of the knobs for that matter, it's going to set them to some preferred values, I guess you can call them, or default values. In this case, for the speed, it's going to go 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and 63. These are a bit more musical when it comes to the speed of the LFO and how it's going to play back against the multiplier. So for me, I usually mess with the speed of about 16, and I set my multiplier to a BPM 16. So check this. Press play. You hear that? Basically going up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Basically, it's completing 2 cycles by the time it comes back to the 1. But if I stop this and I press play, you can hear that our up is now over here. So why is our LFO always changing? See, now our up's here. That's because our mode is set to free. The mode, you have a bunch of different ways of the way it interacts with the triggers. So free, it's a free running LFO. It doesn't matter. Sure, it's tempo synced, but from the start, it's going to be forever moving in tempo. So this is really cool to get some cool movement that's still rhythmic. But if you want something to be very precise, set it over to trig, TRG, and the symbol's going to look like that. Basically, what this means is every time that there is a trigger happening within the sequence, it's going to re-trigger the LFO from the start phase point. And what the start phase point is this right here, this knob F. And that basically says at what point in the cycle of the LFO is it going to start at. In this case, a triangle, is it going to start at the top, the bottom, the middle point? You can kind of change the way it interacts here. So watch. If I move this a little more. Oh, that's kind of cool. So then if I add more triggers, right? You kind of get the idea. Then you can move the start point again. Oh, it's starting way at the bottom of it. I really like that one, so I'm gonna go ahead and leave it there. The next cool thing about the modes is after you have your trigger, you have your hold. Hold is a little funky to mess around with when things are synced to the tempo. Basically, it's a free running LFO in the background, but as soon as the trigger hits, it's going to hold that value of wherever the LFO is at that point in time. So say we have an LFO going like this, and then a trigger happens, it's going to hold it there. So you can picture another LFO going here, and now it's holding the tempo here, right? This is the worst way to use my fingers in explaining this. Basically, if the LFO is currently at the top point and a trigger happens, the new value is going to hold there, but the LFO is going to stay running until another trigger happens, and say the trigger happens here, it's going to then set the value to that. So this is really cool when it comes to using the random mode, the random LFO, or having these kind of free sync doing their own thing. You can come up with a lot of cool things, especially when it comes to like filter frequency or pitch or sample start point. After that mode, we have one mode, and what one means is it's going to cycle through the LFO just once, and then that's it. Similar to half mode, it's going to cycle through half the LFO and then stop at the halfway point, which in most cases, if the start phase point is set to 0, which is the beginning of the wave shape, it's going to go up or whatever direction and then kind of come back to that same 0 point. So it's basically half of the LFO cycle. Last but not least, we got our fade knob, which is knob C. You turn this to the left, it's basically going to say the depth of the LFO going to its destination, fade in as I hit the trigger, or if I hold down a note, it's going to let the LFO depth fade to the max value of which it's set. If you turn it to the right, when I release that, if there's still some amp release or the sound hangs out a little bit, when I let go of the trigger, fade the depth back down to 0, or if it's negative, fade it back up to 0, basically essentially turning it off. But for most cases, I usually set it to none just because I'm using it more rhythmically. Okay, so now that we got the basics down of the LFO, I'm going to show my favorite way of using the LFO, which is basically the setting I have it set to now. We heard it for a second earlier, which is, it's kind of that, like, you can create these new little kind of sounds within it using basically the retrigger mode and the start phase. Let's go ahead and move through some of the wave shades. This one's kind of cool. Let's change the start point fade. Let's see if we can move the start phase point to almost at the bottom so it triggers and then pops up. There it is. So it almost looks like it's lagging, right? So now let's flip this negatively and invert this. Move it a little more. Let's set this to -16, see what it does. Whoa, that is trippy. So right here on 13, because again it's tempo synced, it's popping up. Let's go ahead and add some drums to this. Hold on, I'm not about to make some super cheesy hip hop. I gotta speed this up a little bit. My bad. Alright, this kind of works. Let's see. Go ahead and quantize that a little bit because that was awful. You know what, not too much. Then I'm gonna just go ahead and fix some of these. I'll do this guy here, but let's shorten him up a little. So cool, we have this kind of beat going with the sample that we're using. Let's go back to the LFO page and start, just flipping around with it, see what we can do. Almost sounds like a sidechain. Maybe not so much on the depth. Let's go positive again, 63. Let's do a little bit of half. So now that I moved from 16 to 32, it's just doubling the speed. This is cool because this will also get affected chromatically. Just gotta make this 64 bars. Or steps, I should 64 bars was the whole song. I do that per pattern. There we go. Oh, what am I doing? That's kind of cool. Again, you can kind of go mess around like with note holds. Get this kick drum kind of bumping a little. Here's a quick tip. Here's a good way to blow out speakers. Resonance up, high pass, and find where the kick hits. Okay, I'm just clipping now. But if you do this and then lower the volume, kind of get some new texture out of it. Back to track 8, LFO. Let's see what else we could do. Let's go and change the start phase point, but only on a couple. So I'm gonna go back and shorten this to just 32. We'll go to page 32 and change the start phase point of this back one here. Ooh, that was cool. Let's set this one to 0. And set this also to 0. And turn the filter up on this one and the resonance. That's cool. Turn the resonance up in general. Alright, I didn't want this to get too crazy long. That was a little jam, basically utilizing some of the LFO power with this. You can also do weird stuff like, let's say, sample start point. And you know what? Let's go ahead and mess around with that. That's kind of cool. It really just changes the last couple notes. Let's go ahead and mess with it a little more. Let's go negative. This is weird. Let's say play reverse. Whoa. That's kind of cool. See what I'm saying? Like, I just changed one destination in the LFO. Then I changed the way it plays. And we have something crazy that I was not expecting at all to find. Okay, seriously, yeah, I don't want this to get too long. That's the LFO page. Speed multiplies that speed against the tempo, fades in or out. Your destination, start, sample page, amp page, filter page, your different wave shapes, your start phase point, the mode at which it plays, and then your depth. That's all there really is to the LFO page. I really hope this video helps you guys out. If there's something about the LFO page that still mystifies you, leave it down in the comments below. Let me know about it and I'll get to it as soon as I can. I love hearing from you guys all the time. Again, thank you guys all for the support. It really means a lot to me. If you guys like this video, I'd really appreciate the thumbs up. If you didn't like this video, give me a thumbs down and let me know why. Please, I would love to improve on these videos. Even if you like this video and you want to see more of something else, leave it down in the comments. Let me know about it. You guys can always follow me on my Instagram, where I post a lot of other videos like this with other studio gear that I got. And there may be something in my studio that you want to see a video on. So hit me up on my Instagram and let me know about it. But without further ado, you guys know the drill, and that's to share the love, share the knowledge. Knowledge is power. Peace. This tutorial is going to be, sorry for you, oh my god, did I break your leg? Alright, a quick side note before we get lost. What are you doing? This tutorial is going to be a little bit more catered towards beginners than it is the advanced guys, but there may be a couple hidden gems in there, so I can barely do this.